The wagon jolted over another rut in the dusty trail, and Zachary Owens heard something that made his blood run cold. A sharp, frightened gasp that definitely had not come from his horse. He pulled the reins hard, bringing the wagon to an abrupt stop just outside El Dorado Canyon, Nevada, where the red rock cliffs cast long shadows in the afternoon sun of 1878. The sound had come from behind him, from under the canvas covering his supplies. Zachary reached for his rifle slowly, his heart hammering as he turned on the wooden seat. "Come out real slow," he called, his voice steady despite the adrenaline rushing through his veins. "I got a gun pointed at whatever is back there." There was a moment of terrible silence, then a trembling voice answered. "Please do not shoot. I mean no harm." It was a woman's voice, young and terrified. Zachary lowered the rifle slightly but kept it ready as he climbed down from the seat and moved to the back of the wagon. He pulled back the canvas with one hand, squinting into the dimness. Huddled between a barrel of flour and a crate of tools was a girl, her dark hair tangled and dusty, her face smudged with dirt. She wore a torn calico dress that might have been blue once but was now faded and stained. Her eyes were wide with fear but also something else that Zachary recognized all too well, desperation. What in the name of? Zachary stopped himself, lowering the rifle completely. "How long have you been in there?" "Since Fort Collins," she whispered. 2 days, I think, maybe longer." I lost track. That meant she had traveled over 100 miles hidden in his wagon without food or water as far as he knew. Zachary set the rifle against the wagon wheel and held out his hand. "Come on out. You look half dead." The girl hesitated, studying his face as if trying to determine whether she could trust him. Finally, she reached out with a shaking hand and let him help her down. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground, and Zachary caught her elbow to steady her. "When did you last eat?" he asked. "I had some bread, 3 days back, and I drank from your water barrel at night when you were sleeping." Her voice was barely above a whisper, and she looked at the ground as if expecting him to strike her for the theft. Instead, Zachary guided her to the front of the wagon and helped her sit on the seat. He retrieved his canteen and a cloth bag that contained jerky and hardtack. "Drink slow," he instructed, watching as she took the canteen with trembling hands. "And eat slowly too, or you will make yourself sick." She obeyed, taking small sips and nibbling at the jerky. Color started to return to her pale cheeks. Zachary leaned against the wagon, studying her. She looked to be around 19 or 20, with delicate features despite the dirt and exhaustion. There was something refined about her, even in her current state, that suggested she had not always lived rough. "I reckon you have a story," he said finally. "And I reckon I deserve to hear it, seeing as you have been stealing rides and water from me." The girl looked at him with those large, frightened eyes. "My name is Beatrice Carson, and if you take me back to where I came from, they will kill me." Zachary felt his stomach drop. "That is a mighty serious claim. Who wants to kill you?" Beatrice took another sip of water, her hands still shaking. "My uncle, Harold Carson. He owns a ranch outside Fort Collins, one of the biggest in Colorado. After my parents died of fever last year, I went to live with him and my aunt. I thought I would be safe there." Her voice broke and she paused to collect herself. "Go on," Zachary said gently. "He arranged a marriage for me, to a man named Dutch Kramer. Do you know that name?" Zachary did. Everyone in this part of the country knew Dutch Kramer. He was a cattle rustler and worse, a man who had killed at least 3 people that the law knew about and probably more that they did not. He was also nearly 50 years old and had buried 2 wives already under suspicious circumstances. "I know it," Zachary said grimly. "When I refused, my uncle locked me in my room. He said I was ungrateful, that Dutch had offered a good bride price and I should be honored. but I heard the servants talking. They said Dutch's last wife had bruises all the time, that she fell down the stairs one night and broke her neck. Beatrice's voice was steady now, anger replacing some of the fear. They said it was no accident, so you ran. I climbed out my window 3 nights ago and walked to town. I saw your wagon outside the general store and hid in it. I did not know where you were going, but anywhere was better than becoming Dutch Kramer's third dead wife. Zachary rubbed his jaw, thinking. The smart thing would be to take her to the sheriff in El Dorado Canyon, let the law sort it out. But he knew how these things went. Harold Carson was rich and powerful. Dutch Kramer was dangerous. A girl with no family and no money would not stand a chance against them, even with the law involved. "How old are you?" he asked. 20. I turned 20 last month, for all the good it did me. My uncle said I was getting too old to be unmarried, that I should be grateful anyone wanted me. There was bitterness in her voice now. Zachary looked at the town in the distance, then back at Beatrice. He thought about his own past, about the times when someone had helped him when they did not have to. He thought about what kind of man he wanted to be. "I have a small ranch about 10 miles from here," he said slowly. "Nothing fancy, just a cabin and some land where I run cattle. My mother lives there, keeps the house while I make supply runs and tend the herd. You could stay there for a bit, until we figure out what to do." Beatrice looked at him with such hope and relief that it made his chest ache. "You would do that, for a stranger?" "I cannot in good conscience send you back to a man who would kill you," Zachary said. "That would make me no better than your uncle, but I should warn you if Harold Carson comes looking for you, there might be trouble. I understand, and I will work for my keep. I can cook and clean, mend clothes, tend a garden. I will not be a burden." Zachary climbed back onto the wagon seat and picked up the reins. "Right now, you just need to rest. We will worry about the rest later." As they rode toward his ranch, Beatrice fell silent, leaning against the seat with her eyes closed. Zachary found himself stealing glances at her, wondering what kind of uncle would sell his niece to a man like Dutch Kramer. The answer, he knew, was the kind who valued money more than family. The sun was setting when they reached the ranch, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The cabin was small but well built, with a barn nearby and a corral where several horses grazed. Smoke rose from the chimney, and Zachary felt the familiar sense of relief that always came with arriving home. His mother, Martha Owens, came out on the porch as soon as she heard the wagon. She was a sturdy woman in her 50s with graying hair pulled back in a bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes widened when she saw Beatrice. "Zachary, who is this?" "This is Beatrice Carson. She needs our help." Zachary climbed down and went to help Beatrice, who was swaying on her feet. "She has been hiding in my wagon for 2 days without food." Martha did not waste time with questions. She hurried down the porch steps and took Beatrice's other arm. "Good Lord, child, you look ready to drop. Let us get you inside and fed properly." Together, they helped Beatrice into the cabin. It was warm and cozy, with a fire crackling in the stone fireplace and the smell of stew filling the air. Martha guided Beatrice to a chair at the wooden table and immediately ladled a bowl of stew from the pot hanging over the fire. "Eat this slowly," Martha instructed, setting the bowl in front of her along with a chunk of bread. "Your stomach will not handle too much at once if you have been starving." While Beatrice ate, Zachary told his mother the whole story. Martha's face grew darker with anger as he spoke, especially when he mentioned Dutch Kramer. "That devil," she said when Zachary finished. "I heard about his wives. No woman deserves that fate." She turned to Beatrice with a kind but firm expression. "You are welcome here as long as you need to stay. We will keep you safe." Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. I cannot tell you what this means to me. I thought I would die in that wagon or get caught and be dragged back." "You are safe now," Martha said firmly. She looked at Zachary. "We should let folks in town know she is under our protection. Once word gets around, Harold Carson will think twice about causing trouble." Zachary nodded. His mother was right. In a community like theirs, reputation mattered. If people knew the Owens family was protecting Beatrice, it would make things more complicated for anyone trying to take her by force. After Beatrice finished eating, Martha showed her to the small room that had belonged to Zachary's sister before she had married and moved to California. It had a narrow bed with a quilt, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the valley. "I will heat some water so you can wash," Martha said, "and I will find you a clean dress. We are about the same size, I think." Beatrice touched the quilt with reverent fingers. "I do not know how I will ever repay you. You just focus on getting your strength back. We will worry about the rest later." Martha patted her shoulder and left to heat the water. Zachary stood in the doorway, uncertain. "I am sorry this happened to you." Beatrice turned to look at him, really look at him for the first time. In the lamplight, he could see that beneath the dirt and exhaustion, she was lovely. But it was more than that. There was strength in her eyes, a determination that had gotten her this far. "You saved my life today," she said softly. "Most men would have turned me in or taken advantage. But you helped me." "Why?" Zachary considered the question. "My father died when I was 15, left us with debt and not much else. A neighbor, old Tom Fletcher, could have bought our land for nothing. Instead, he helped us get back on our feet, taught me ranching, never asked for anything in return. He said there were too many folks in this world looking to take advantage and not enough trying to help. I figured if I ever got the chance to help someone who truly needed it, I would do the same. Then Tom Fletcher was a good man, and so are you." After Beatrice had washed and changed into one of Martha's dresses, she returned to the main room. Her dark hair was still damp but clean, and the borrowed dress, though simple, fit her well. She looked like a different person, younger and healthier, though her eyes still held shadows. Martha had made up a bed on the couch for Zachary, insisting that Beatrice take his room as well since it was more private. Zachary did not argue. He lay awake for a long time that night, listening to the crackling fire and thinking about the frightened girl he had found in his wagon. He had told her she was safe, but was she really? Harold Carson would not give up easily, not with Dutch Kramer's bride price at stake. And Dutch himself was not the kind of man to accept rejection, especially from a woman he considered his property. Zachary knew trouble was coming. The only question was when. The next morning, Beatrice woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming, that she would open her eyes and find herself back in that locked room at her uncle's ranch. But when she sat up, she saw the cozy room, felt the soft quilt, and heard Martha humming in the kitchen. She dressed quickly and went out to find Martha cooking breakfast while Zachary sat at the table, reading a week-old newspaper. "Good morning," Martha said cheerfully. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in months," Beatrice admitted. "Thank you again for your kindness." "No thanks needed. Sit down and eat. You need to put some meat on those bones." As they ate breakfast, Zachary outlined his plan. "I need to go into town today, let folks know what is happening. The sheriff should know too, just in case your uncle shows up. If you are agreeable, I would like you to come with me. Better that people see you and know you are here of your own choice." Beatrice nodded, though she looked nervous. "What if there are men from my uncle already looking for me?" "Then we deal with it," Zachary said simply. "But you cannot hide forever. Better to face this head-on." They rode into El Dorado Canyon mid-morning, Beatrice sitting beside Zachary on the wagon seat. The town was small but lively, with a main street lined with shops, a saloon, a church, and a sheriff's office. People stopped to stare as they passed, curious about the young woman with Zachary Owens. Zachary stopped the wagon in front of the sheriff's office and helped Beatrice down. Sheriff Tom Wilson was a gray-haired man in his 60s who had been keeping the peace in El Dorado Canyon for over 20 years. He looked up from his desk as they entered, his weathered face curious. "Zachary, what brings you to town so soon? You were just here yesterday." "I have a situation, Sheriff. This is Beatrice Carson. I found her hiding in my wagon yesterday. She has a story you need to hear." Beatrice told the sheriff everything, her voice steady despite her nervousness. Sheriff Wilson's expression grew grave as he listened. "I know Harold Carson by reputation," he said when she finished, "and I know Dutch Kramer better than I would like. If what you are saying is true, you were right to run." "It is all true," Beatrice said firmly. "Every word." The sheriff leaned back in his chair, thinking. "Problem is, you are of age and you ran away from your legal guardian. If Carson comes here demanding your return, the law is not entirely clear on where I stand." "She is not going back," Zachary said, his voice hard. "Not to be forced into marriage with a man like Kramer." "I am not saying she should," the sheriff said. "I am just telling you how Carson might see it, but there is another option." He looked at Beatrice thoughtfully. "If you were married to someone else, Carson would have no claim on you. Your husband would be your legal guardian, not your uncle." The suggestion hung in the air. Zachary felt his heart start to pound, though he was not entirely sure why. Beatrice looked down at her hands, her cheeks flushing. "I cannot ask anyone to marry me just to save me from my uncle," she said quietly. "That would not be fair." "It might be the only way to make sure you are safe," the sheriff said. "Think about it." They left the sheriff's office and walked down the main street. Zachary could feel people watching them, and he knew the gossip was already spreading. By nightfall, everyone in El Dorado Canyon would know about Beatrice Carson and her flight from Harold Carson and Dutch Kramer. "I am sorry," Beatrice said as they reached the wagon. "I have brought trouble to you and your mother." "You have not brought anything we cannot handle," Zachary assured her. But his mind was churning, thinking about what the sheriff had said. Marriage. It was a drastic solution, but it would work. Once Beatrice was married, Harold Carson would have no legal authority over her. But marriage was not something to be entered into lightly, even for practical reasons. Zachary barely knew this girl, yet something about her had stirred something in him from the moment he had seen her frightened face in his wagon. Was it just pity? Or was it something more? They were loading supplies into the wagon when a commotion at the end of the street made them both turn. 3 men on horseback were riding hard into town, their horses lathered with sweat. The man in the lead was tall and broad-shouldered, with a thick mustache and cold eyes. Zachary felt Beatrice go rigid beside him. "That is Dutch Kramer," she whispered. Zachary's hand instinctively went to his gun belt, but he forced himself to stay calm. Running now would only make things worse. Instead, he stepped slightly in front of Beatrice, putting himself between her and the approaching men. Dutch Kramer pulled his horse to a stop in front of them, dust swirling around the animal's hooves. His cold eyes fixed on Beatrice, and a slow smile spread across his face. It was not a pleasant smile. "There you are, little bird. Your uncle has been mighty worried about you." "I am not going back," Beatrice said, her voice shaking but determined. "You cannot make me." "Now, that is not very grateful," Dutch said. "Your uncle and I had an agreement. You belong to me." "She does not belong to anyone," Zachary said, his voice steady and hard. "And she is under my protection, so I suggest you ride on out of here before there is trouble." Dutch's eyes shifted to Zachary, assessing him. "And who might you be?" "Zachary Owens." This is my town, and that is my guest you are threatening." "Your guest?" Dutch laughed, a harsh sound. "Boy, you have no idea who you are dealing with. Harold Carson wants his niece back, and I aim to deliver her. Now step aside before you get hurt." "No." The single word hung in the air like a gunshot. The two men with Dutch shifted in their saddles, hands moving toward their guns. But before anyone could draw, Sheriff Wilson's voice cut through the tension. "That will be enough, Dutch." The sheriff had come out of his office, a rifle cradled in his arms. Several townsmen had also appeared, drawn by the commotion, and they stood watching with hard eyes. Dutch Cramer might be dangerous, but he was outnumbered. "This is none of your concern, Sheriff," Dutch said, but some of the confidence had left his voice. "When a man threatens folks in my town, it becomes my concern," Sheriff Wilson said. "Miss Carson has made it clear she does not want to go with you, and last I checked, slavery was abolished. So I suggest you and your boys ride out of here." Dutch's jaw clenched, and for a moment Zachary thought he might actually draw his gun. But Dutch was many things. Stupid was not one of them. He looked around at the assembled townspeople, at the sheriff's rifle, and apparently decided this was not a fight he could win today. "This is not over," he said, his eyes boring into Beatrice. "You are going to regret running from me." "I already regret ever meeting you," Beatrice said, her voice stronger now. "Now leave." Dutch spat in the dust and wheeled his horse around. His men followed, and they galloped out of town in a cloud of dust. But Zachary knew Dutch was right about one thing. This was not over. The sheriff came over to them, his expression grave. "You need to think seriously about what I said earlier. Dutch Cramer is not the kind of man to give up, and neither is Harold Carson. The only way to protect Miss Carson legally is to change her legal status." Zachary looked at Beatrice, who was pale but composed. "Can we talk?" he asked her. Privately, they walked to the edge of town, where a small grove of cottonwood trees provided shade and privacy. For a long moment neither of them spoke, both trying to process what had just happened. Finally, Zachary said, "The sheriff is right. Marriage is the only way to protect you legally. Your uncle cannot force you to marry Dutch if you are already married to someone else." "But we barely know each other," Beatrice said. "I cannot ask you to tie yourself to me for life just to save me." "You are not asking, I am offering." Zachary took a deep breath. "Look, I know this is not how these things usually happen. Usually, a man courts a woman, they fall in love, and then they get married. But sometimes life does not work that way. Sometimes you have to make the practical choice and hope the rest follows. What if it does not? What if we marry and find we cannot stand each other? Then we will deal with that when it comes. But right now the choice is between marrying me or risking Dutch Cramer finding a way to take you back, and I will not let that happen." Beatrice looked at him with those large, expressive eyes. "Why are you doing this? Really?" Zachary thought about that. He could give her a practical answer, talk about doing the right thing and helping those in need. But standing here in the shade of the cottonwoods, looking at this brave young woman who had risked everything to escape a terrible fate, he realized the truth was more complicated. "Because when I pulled back that canvas and saw you hiding in my wagon, terrified and desperate, something in me changed," he said slowly. "I have been alone for a long time, just me and my mother and the ranch. I guess maybe I was waiting for something, or someone, to come along and remind me that there is more to life than just surviving. You did that, Beatrice. In one day, you reminded me what it means to care about someone else's life more than your own comfort." Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. "You are a good man, Zachary Owens, better than I deserve." "You deserve better than what your uncle tried to give you," Zachary said firmly. "So what do you say? Will you marry me?" It was the strangest proposal imaginable, born of necessity rather than romance. But as Beatrice looked at Zachary, at his honest face and steady eyes, she felt something shift in her chest. This man had saved her life, offered her protection, and was now willing to marry her to keep her safe. That was worth more than all the flowery words and romantic gestures in the world. "Yes," she said, "I will marry you." They returned to town and went directly to the church. Reverend Samuel Hayes was a kind man in his 40s who had presided over most of the weddings, funerals, and baptisms in El Dorado Canyon for the past decade. He looked surprised when Zachary and Beatrice walked into the small white church and explained what they needed. "You want to get married right now?" he asked, his eyebrows rising. "Today?" "Yes, Reverend," Zachary said. "It is a matter of some urgency." The Reverend looked between them, clearly seeing that there was a story here. But he was a wise man who understood that sometimes people had their reasons. "Do you both enter into this marriage of your own free will?" "Yes," they said together. "Very well. Let me get my wife to serve as a witness, and we will proceed." Mrs. Hayes was brought in, along with the sheriff, who had offered to serve as the second witness. They stood in the small church with sunlight streaming through the windows, and Reverend Hayes opened his Bible. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." As the Reverend spoke the familiar words, Zachary found himself looking at Beatrice. She had cleaned up remarkably well, and in Martha's borrowed dress with her hair pulled back, she was lovely. But more than that, there was strength in her bearing, courage in the way she stood straight and tall despite everything she had been through. When it came time for the vows, Beatrice's voice was clear and steady. "I, Beatrice Carson, take you, Zachary Owens, to be my lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part." Zachary repeated the words, and as he did, he realized that he meant them. This might have started as a practical arrangement, but he was making a promise before God and these witnesses, and he intended to keep it. "By the power vested in me by the territory of Nevada, I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Hayes said. "You may kiss your bride." It was their first kiss, awkward and brief, but it sealed the bargain. They were married. Sheriff Wilson shook Zachary's hand and kissed Beatrice's cheek. "Congratulations to you both. And Miss Carson, or rather, Mrs. Owens, you are now legally under your husband's protection. Harold Carson has no claim on you anymore." They signed the marriage certificate, making it official. As they left the church, Zachary felt a strange mix of emotions. He had woken up this morning a single man, and now he was married. His life had changed completely in the span of a day. Martha was waiting at the ranch when they returned, and her eyes widened when she saw them holding hands. "Mother," Zachary said, "I would like you to meet my wife, Beatrice Owens." For a moment Martha just stared, then a slow smile spread across her face. "Well, I will be. You did not waste any time, did you?" She pulled Beatrice into a hug. "Welcome to the family, daughter." That night, they had a simple celebration dinner. Martha had cooked a roast with vegetables, and they toasted the newlyweds with elderberry wine that Martha had made herself. It was a far cry from the grand wedding Beatrice might have imagined as a girl, but it was warm and genuine, and that mattered more. Later, when Beatrice and Zachary were alone in his room, which was now their room, things became awkward. Zachary had given her a nightgown that had belonged to his sister, and Beatrice changed behind a screen while he waited, uncertain. "Zachary," Beatrice said when she emerged, "I want you to know that I understand the nature of our marriage. You married me to protect me, not because you wanted a wife. I do not expect anything from you that you are not willing to give." Zachary looked at her, standing there in the lamplight in her nightgown, looking young and vulnerable. "I made vows today, Beatrice. I meant them. We are married, and I will be a good husband to you. But I also know you have been through a lot, and I will not rush you into anything you are not ready for. We have time to figure this out." Relief flooded Beatrice's face. "Thank you." They lay down in the narrow bed, awkward and careful not to touch each other too much. But as the night wore on and sleep came, they naturally moved closer together, seeking warmth and comfort. When morning came, Zachary woke to find Beatrice's head resting on his shoulder, her breathing soft and even. For the first time in years, he did not wake up feeling alone. The next few days fell into a new rhythm. Beatrice threw herself into helping Martha with the household work, cooking and cleaning and mending. She proved to be an excellent cook, with a talent for making even simple ingredients into something delicious. She also spent time in the garden, weeding and watering, bringing new life to the vegetables that had been struggling under Martha's less attentive care. Zachary watched her work, impressed by her determination to prove her worth. But more than that, he found himself simply enjoying her presence. She had a quick wit and a sharp mind, and in the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk about everything from books to philosophy to the nature of the stars. "My mother taught me to read when I was little," Beatrice told him one evening. "She said education was the only thing no one could take from you. I used to read everything I could get my hands on. My uncle thought it was a waste of time, said I should focus on learning to be a proper wife instead." "Your mother was a wise woman," Zachary said, "and your uncle was a fool." Beatrice smiled, and Zachary felt his heart skip a beat. She had been smiling more often lately, the fear and tension slowly leaving her face. He liked seeing her this way, relaxed and happy, but their peace was not destined to last. 2 weeks after the wedding, Zachary was working in the barn when he heard horses approaching. He looked out to see 4 men riding toward the ranch, and his blood ran cold when he recognized Harold Carson in the lead. The man was even bigger than Dutch Kramer, with silver hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. Zachary grabbed his rifle and stepped out of the barn just as the men reached the house. Beatrice and Martha had heard the horses too and came out onto the porch, Beatrice going pale when she saw her uncle. "Beatrice," Harold Carson's voice boomed across the yard, "get down here right now. This foolishness has gone on long enough." "She is not going anywhere with you," Zachary said, walking forward with the rifle held ready. "And you are trespassing on my property." Harold turned his cold gaze on Zachary. "You must be the fool who thinks he can steal another man's niece." "Well, boy, you are about to learn a hard lesson about interfering in family business." "She is not your niece anymore," Zachary said calmly. "She is my wife. We were married 2 weeks ago, all legal and proper, so you have no claim on her." Harold's face went red with rage. "Married? You think that matters? That marriage is not legal. She is not of age to marry without my permission." "She is 20 years old," Zachary said. "That is plenty old enough to make her own choices, and the law says a woman can marry at 18 without permission from anyone." "So your permission was never needed." Harold opened his mouth to argue, but then Sheriff Wilson rode into the yard along with 2 deputies. The sheriff had been keeping an eye on the ranch, knowing that trouble might come. "That is enough, Carson," the sheriff said. "You have heard the truth of it. Beatrice is married and no longer under your authority. You have no business here." "That girl owes me," Harold snarled. "I took her in, fed her, clothed her, and this is how she repays me, by running off and ruining a profitable arrangement." "Profitable for you, maybe," Beatrice said, finding her voice. She walked down from the porch, standing beside Zachary. "You never cared about me, Uncle. You just wanted Dutch Kramer's money. Well, you cannot have it. I am married to Zachary, and nothing you say or do will change that." Harold's hand moved toward his gun, and Zachary raised his rifle. But the sheriff was faster, his own gun drawn and pointed at Harold. "Do not even think about it," the sheriff said coldly. "You draw that weapon and you will spend the rest of your life in prison, assuming you live that long." Harold looked around at the armed men facing him and apparently realized he was beaten. He fixed Beatrice with a look of pure hatred. "You will regret this. You have made a powerful enemy today." "I already had a powerful enemy," Beatrice said, "when you tried to sell me to a killer. At least now I have people who actually care about me." Harold spat in the dust and wheeled his horse around. His men followed, and they rode off in a cloud of dust and anger. But Zachary knew this was not really over. Men like Harold Carson did not forget slights, and they did not forgive. The sheriff holstered his gun and tipped his hat to Beatrice. "You did good, Mrs. Owens. Standing up to him like that took courage." "I had help," Beatrice said, looking at Zachary with an expression that made his heart race. After the sheriff left, Martha insisted on making a celebratory dinner. "We should be grateful," she said. "That could have gone much worse." That night, as Zachary and Beatrice prepared for bed, there was a new ease between them. The confrontation with Harold had changed something, made them feel more like true partners instead of strangers bound by convenience. "Thank you," Beatrice said as she brushed out her hair, "for standing up for me, for protecting me." "You are my wife," Zachary said simply. "That is what husbands do." Beatrice set down the brush and turned to look at him. In the lamplight, her eyes were dark and luminous. "Is that all I am to you? A duty?" Zachary felt his breath catch. He had been trying to give her space to let her adjust to their strange situation. But the truth was that over the past 2 weeks, his feelings had been changing. She was not just a responsibility anymore. She was Beatrice with her quick mind and brave heart and beautiful smile. She was becoming someone he cared about deeply. "No," he said honestly. "You are more than that, much more." Beatrice crossed the small room and stood in front of him. "I am glad, because you are more to me too. When I hid in your wagon, I was running from something terrible. But when you found me, when you offered me protection and kindness, I found something I did not expect. I found hope. And now I think I might be finding something else." "What is that?" Zachary asked, though his heart already knew the answer. "Love," Beatrice whispered. Zachary reached out and cupped her face gently in his hands. "I think I might be finding that too." Their second kiss was nothing like the brief, awkward kiss in the church. This one was slow and deep, full of all the feelings they had been holding back. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "We should probably get some sleep," Zachary said, though he made no move to let her go. "Probably," Beatrice agreed, but she kissed him again instead. That night, their marriage became real in every way. And when they finally fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms, both felt that they had found something precious and worth fighting for. The seasons changed, and autumn gave way to winter. The ranch was beautiful, covered in snow, and Beatrice delighted in experiencing her first winter as a free woman. She and Zachary grew closer every day, learning each other's rhythms and quirks, building a partnership that went beyond the practical arrangement that had started their marriage. Martha watched them with satisfaction, happy to see her son so content. She had worried about him, seeing him grow more solitary and closed off after his father's death. But Beatrice had brought light back into his life and into the ranch. On Christmas Eve, they had a small celebration. Martha had made a special dinner, and they exchanged simple gifts. Zachary gave Beatrice a beautiful leather-bound journal he had ordered from a catalog, knowing how much she loved to read and write. Beatrice gave him a shirt she had sewn herself, with careful, even stitches and his initials embroidered on the pocket. "It is perfect," Zachary said, running his fingers over the embroidery. "Thank you." "I wanted to make you something," Beatrice said, "to show you how much you mean to me." After Martha had gone to bed, Zachary and Beatrice sat by the fire, watching the flames dance. The ranch was quiet, peaceful, with snow falling gently outside the windows. "I have something else for you," Zachary said. He pulled out a small box from his pocket and handed it to her. Inside was a simple gold ring with a small sapphire. "I know I did not give you a proper proposal or a real wedding ring," Zachary said, "but I wanted to give you something that showed this is real, that you are not just someone I married out of duty, but someone I choose every day." Beatrice's eyes filled with tears as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "It is beautiful, I love it, and I love you." "I love you too," Zachary said and kissed her. The winter passed peacefully, with no word from Harold Carson or Dutch Kramer. The sheriff kept Zachary informed of any rumors, but it seemed that the two men had moved on to other schemes. Beatrice began to relax, to truly believe that she was safe. Spring brought new life to the ranch. The garden flourished under Beatrice's care, and the cattle were thriving. Zachary taught Beatrice to ride, and she took to it naturally, soon accompanying him when he checked on the herd. They would ride out in the mornings, just the two of them, and talk about their dreams for the future. "I would like to expand the herd," Zachary said one morning as they sat on a ridge overlooking the valley. "Maybe build a bigger barn, hire some help." "That sounds wonderful," Beatrice said, "and I would like to plant more in the garden. Maybe sell vegetables in town, bring in a little extra money." "We make a good team," Zachary said, reaching over to take her hand. "Yes, we do." In May, Beatrice realized she was with child. She had suspected for a few weeks, but when the doctor in town confirmed it, she felt a rush of joy mixed with nervousness. She told Zachary that evening, watching his face carefully to see his reaction. His eyes went wide with shock, then filled with tears of happiness. "A baby." "We are going to have a baby." "Yes," Beatrice said, laughing as he swept her into his arms. "Are you happy?" "Happy. I am beyond happy. This is the best news I have ever received." He set her down carefully, suddenly worried. "Are you all right? Do you need to sit down? Should you be working in the garden?" Beatrice laughed at his concern. "I am fine. Women have babies all the time, but yes, I will be more careful." Martha was overjoyed at the news. She immediately began planning, talking about baby clothes and cradles and all the things they would need. Zachary built a cradle in the barn, working on it every evening until it was perfect. The summer was peaceful and productive. Beatrice's belly grew round, and Zachary found himself constantly amazed by the changes in her body, by the life growing inside her. He would put his hand on her stomach and feel the baby kick and wonder at the miracle of it. One evening in late August, they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset when riders appeared on the horizon. Zachary tensed, recognizing the lead horse. It was Dutch Kramer, and he was not alone. This time he had brought at least 10 men with him. "Get inside," Zachary told Beatrice urgently, "and stay away from the windows." "What is happening?" Beatrice asked, but she could see the fear in his eyes. "Just do as I say, please." Beatrice went inside, and Martha immediately moved to protect her. Zachary grabbed his rifle and stepped off the porch, positioning himself in front of the house. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. Dutch and his men rode right up to the house, surrounding it. Dutch had a cruel smile on his face. "Well, well," he said. "Looks like you have been busy, Owens. I hear congratulations are in order. A baby on the way, they tell me." "State your business and get off my property," Zachary said coldly. "My business is simple. Harold Carson paid me good money for that girl, and I aim to collect. A deal is a deal." She was never his to sell, Zachary said, and she is my wife now, so you have no claim on her. See, that is where you are wrong, Dutch said. He pulled out a piece of paper. This here is a marriage contract between Harold Carson and myself, signed before you ever met that girl. In exchange for his niece becoming my wife, I paid him $5,000. Now, I am a reasonable man. You give me back my money plus interest, and I will consider the matter settled. Otherwise, I am taking what is mine. How do I know that paper is real? Zachary demanded. It could be forged. It is real enough that a judge will honor it, Dutch said. So what is it going to be? You got $10,000 lying around. Zachary felt sick. $10,000 was more money than he would make in 5 years. There was no way he could pay it, but he would die before he let Dutch take Beatrice. I am not giving you anything, Zachary said. And you are not taking her, so you can ride on out of here or we can settle this another way. Dutch laughed. Boy, I got 10 men with me. You really want to fight those odds, if I have to. But before anyone could draw their guns, a new voice rang out across the yard. I think you will find the odds are not quite what you thought. Dutch turned to see Sheriff Wilson approaching with at least 20 armed men from town. Ranchers, shopkeepers, even the reverend carrying a shotgun. The whole community had turned out. This is none of your business, Sheriff, Dutch growled. When a man threatens one of our own, it becomes our business, the sheriff said. Zachary and Beatrice Owens are part of this community, and we take care of our own. Dutch looked around at the armed men facing him. His cruel smile faded as he realized he was outnumbered 2-1. Even if they fought, he would lose. This is not over, he said, his voice filled with venom. I will get what I am owed. The only thing you are owed is a bullet if you ever come near the Owens ranch again, the sheriff said. Now ride out before I arrest you for trespassing and threatening behavior. Dutch stared at Zachary with hatred, but finally wheeled his horse around. His men followed, and they rode off into the gathering darkness. The sheriff came over to Zachary and clapped him on the shoulder. You all right, son? Thanks to you, Zachary said, feeling weak with relief. How did you know to come? Got word that Dutch was gathering men and bragging about coming out here. Figured you might need some backup. The sheriff looked at the house, where Beatrice had appeared in the doorway. You have got a good woman there, Zachary, and a lot of friends in this town. Do not ever forget that. After the townspeople left, Beatrice fell into Zachary's arms, shaking with relief. I thought they were going to take me or kill you. Never, Zachary said fiercely, holding her close. I will never let anyone take you from me. Never. That night, they lay awake talking about what to do. The threat from Dutch Kramer was still real, and the fake contract could cause real legal problems if Dutch found the right judge to hear his case. Maybe we should leave, Beatrice suggested. Go somewhere far away where they cannot find us. This is our home, Zachary said. Our ranch. I'm not letting them drive us away. But how do we fight them? That contract, even if it is fake, might be enough to cause trouble. Zachary thought about it. We need a lawyer. Someone who can prove that contract is not legal, that your uncle had no right to sell you like property. The next day, Zachary rode to Carson City, the territorial capital, to consult with a lawyer. The man he found, Robert Kendrick, was young but sharp, and he listened carefully to the whole story. This is an interesting case, Kendrick said when Zachary finished. If we can prove that the marriage contract was signed without Miss Carson's knowledge or consent, we can have it declared void. But that will take time and money. How much money? Zachary asked. At least $500, maybe more. It was a staggering sum, but Zachary did not hesitate. Do it. I will find the money somehow. He sold some of his cattle and borrowed against the ranch, scraping together every penny he could. It was risky, putting the ranch in jeopardy, but Beatrice was worth any risk. The legal battle dragged on for months. Dutch Craymore hired his own lawyer, and Harold Carson testified that the contract was legitimate. But Kendrick was good at his job. He found witnesses who testified about Dutch's reputation, about Harold's habit of arranging profitable deals. He brought in legal experts who explained that a person could not be sold like property, that marriage required consent from both parties. Through it all, Beatrice's pregnancy progressed. In December, on a snowy night, she went into labor. Martha and the doctor from town attended her, while Zachary paced nervously in the main room. It was a long, difficult labor that lasted through the night and into the next day. Zachary could hear Beatrice crying out, and it tore at him, knowing she was in pain and there was nothing he could do to help. Finally, in the late afternoon, he heard a new sound, the thin, angry wail of a baby. Martha came out, her face tired but smiling. "You have a son," she said. "And Beatrice is fine. Tired, but fine." Zachary rushed into the bedroom. Beatrice lay in the bed, her hair damp with sweat, looking exhausted but radiant. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. When Zachary approached, she pulled back the blanket to reveal a red-faced baby with a shock of dark hair. "Meet your son," Beatrice said softly. Zachary reached out with trembling hands and gently touched the baby's soft cheek. His son. He had a son. The reality of it overwhelmed him, and tears rolled down his face. "He is perfect," Zachary said. "You are both perfect." They named him Thomas after Tom Fletcher, the man who had helped Zachary and his mother so many years ago. And holding his son for the first time, Zachary made a silent vow to give this child everything he had never had: security, love, and a father who would always be there. 2 months later, the legal battle finally concluded. The judge ruled that the contract between Harold Carson and Dutch Craymore was invalid, as it attempted to treat a human being as property. He declared that Beatrice's marriage to Zachary was legal and binding, and that neither Harold Carson nor Dutch Craymore had any claim on her. When the verdict came down, Zachary and Beatrice celebrated quietly at home. The legal fees had nearly bankrupted them, but it was worth it. They were safe. Their family was safe. Spring came again, and with it, new hope. Zachary worked hard to rebuild their finances, taking on extra jobs and slowly repaying his debts. Beatrice kept the house and cared for Thomas, who was growing into a happy, healthy baby. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset with Thomas sleeping in Beatrice's arms, she turned to Zachary with a smile. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "Finding me in your wagon that day, all the trouble I brought into your life?" Zachary looked at her, at their son, at the home they had built together. "Not for a single second. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Even though our beginning was so strange, especially because of that," Zachary said. "Some people spend years courting and still never find what we have. We built something real out of necessity and fear and hope, and I would not change a single moment of it." Beatrice leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Zachary Owens. I love you too, Beatrice Owens." The years passed peacefully after that. The ranch prospered, and Zachary and Beatrice worked side by side to build something lasting. Thomas grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved following his father around the ranch and learning everything about cattle and horses. When Thomas was 3, Beatrice gave birth to twin girls, whom they named Rose and Lily. The girls had Beatrice's dark hair and Zachary's green eyes, and they were a handful from the moment they could crawl. Martha lived to see all her grandchildren born, and she passed away peacefully in her sleep when Thomas was 10, surrounded by the family she loved. They buried her on a hillside overlooking the valley, and Zachary made sure her grave was always covered in wildflowers. Harold Carson died a few years after the legal battle, his fortune gone and his reputation ruined. The gossip was that he had made some bad investments and drunk himself to death. Zachary felt nothing but pity for the man who had valued money over family. Dutch Kramer met a fitting end when one of his own men shot him in the back during a dispute over stolen cattle. The news reached El Dorado Canyon, and Beatrice felt only relief that the man who had threatened her family was finally gone. Through it all, Zachary and Beatrice's love only grew stronger. They were partners in every sense, working together to build a successful ranch and raise their children. The strange beginning of their relationship became a story they told their children on winter nights, a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from unexpected places. When Thomas turned 18, Zachary deeded half the ranch to him, wanting his son to have a stake in the land he would inherit. The girls were not interested in ranching. Rose wanted to be a teacher, and Lily dreamed of opening a dress shop in town. But Zachary made sure they each had money set aside for their futures. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Zachary took Beatrice back to the spot where they had first talked about getting married, under the cottonwood trees at the edge of town. The trees were bigger now, their branches spreading wide and providing deep shade. 20 years, Beatrice said, looking around. It seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. Do you remember what I said to you here? Zachary asked. You said that sometimes you have to make the practical choice and hope the rest follows. Beatrice smiled. I think the rest definitely followed. More than followed, Zachary said. He took her hands in his. You know, I never gave you a proper proposal. I just asked if you would marry me to stay safe. So I thought I would do it right this time. He got down on one knee, and Beatrice laughed even as tears filled her eyes. Beatrice Owens, you are my best friend, my partner, and the love of my life. You have given me 3 beautiful children and 20 years of happiness. Will you stay married to me for another 20 years? And another 20 after that? Yes, Beatrice said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, of course, you foolish man. Zachary stood and kissed her, and it was just as wonderful as their first real kiss had been all those years ago. They grew old together on the ranch, watching their children grow up and have families of their own. Thomas married a girl from town and took over running the ranch, expanding it into one of the most successful in the territory. Rose became a teacher, just as she had dreamed, and taught generations of children in El Dorado Canyon. Lily opened her dress shop and became known throughout Nevada for her beautiful designs. Zachary and Beatrice became grandparents, then great-grandparents, their house always full of family during holidays and celebrations. They would sit on the porch in their rocking chairs, holding hands and watching the children play, and marvel at the life they had built together. When Zachary was 72, he fell ill with pneumonia. The doctor did what he could, but everyone knew the end was near. Beatrice never left his side, holding his hand and talking to him about their life together, about all the memories they had made. I am not afraid, Zachary told her one evening as the sun was setting. I have had a good life, the best life, because of you, because of us, Beatrice corrected, tears streaming down her face. We built this life together. Promise me something, Zachary said, his voice weak. Promise me you will keep living. Keep enjoying the ranch. Keep spending time with the children and grandchildren. Do not let missing me stop you from living. I promise, Beatrice said, though her heart was breaking. But you should know that every good thing in my life started the day I climbed into your wagon. You saved me, Zachary. In every way a person can be saved. And you saved me right back, Zachary said. He smiled, that gentle smile she had fallen in love with so many years ago. "I love you, Beatrice Owens. Always have, always will." "I love you too," Beatrice whispered. Zachary closed his eyes as the sun set, and he never opened them again. He passed peacefully, surrounded by his family, having lived a long and happy life. Beatrice kept her promise. She stayed on the ranch, helping Thomas run things even though she was getting older herself. She spent time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories about their grandfather and the day she had hidden in his wagon, desperate and afraid. "He was the best man I ever knew," she would tell them. "He saw someone in need and helped without hesitation. He taught me what real love looks like, what real courage means. And he gave me all of you." Beatrice lived to be 83, healthy and sharp until the very end. One spring morning, she simply did not wake up. They found her peaceful in her bed, a smile on her face, her hand resting on the pillow where Zachary used to sleep. They buried her next to Zachary on the hillside overlooking the valley, under the wide Nevada sky. The whole town turned out for the funeral, a testament to the lives they had lived and the love they had shared. The ranch continued for generations, always in the Owens family, a lasting legacy of the day a cowboy found a girl hiding in his wagon and chose to help her. It became a family legend, a story passed down through the years, a reminder that love can come from the most unexpected places and that sometimes the best choice you can make is to help someone in need. The original cabin still stood, preserved by the family as a reminder of where it all began. Visitors to the ranch could see the bedroom where Thomas was born, the porch where Zachary and Beatrice spent so many evenings watching the sunset, the barn where Zachary built that first cradle. And if you walked to the edge of the property, to the place where the wagon trail used to run, you could almost imagine a young cowboy pulling back a canvas cover and finding a frightened girl hiding among the supplies, her eyes full of desperate hope. You could almost hear him say in that steady, gentle voice, "Come on out. You look half dead." That simple moment of kindness had changed 2 lives and created a legacy that would last forever. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to help, one person brave enough to take a chance, one person choosing love over fear. And from that choice, miracles can grow.